see you there and welcome. This is Frontier Opening Bell. I am Faith Agbetuya and I have on the call this morning Onyeka Ijema. He's an analyst from Vetiva Capital Management. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Ijema. It's really great having you.
Thank you for having me, Faith. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so let's get on with a look at the closing figures for selected African markets that we monitored here on Frontier Opening Bell, starting with Nigerian Exchange, which finished on the red zone at a marginal loss of 0.01 all share index. We have the BRVM stock exchange finishing green at 0.57%, while the Egyptian exchange had the all share index closing at 10,900, 7.96%, 0.96 all share index, while the percentage change was 0.27 negative. The Nairobi Securities Exchange recorded a negative close at 0.82%, while the Johannesburg Stock Exchange in South Africa recorded a negative close as well with a 1.50% change. Moving away from those figures, let's take a look at the top stories in East African region, with Total Energies Kenya recording a 6 million profit, rising 50% to 1.7 billion Kenyan shillings. Total Energies is also naming Eric Fancini as a new managing director and CEO. In Kenya, there is a 61% rise in bank profits to 96 billion Kenyan shillings in the first half of 2021, while CDN Bank tends to profit at 274.7 million Kenyan shillings in the first half of 2021. Shelter Afrique admits Nigeria's FSA as 47th shareholders. Onyeka, I'm sure that some of these things are interesting to you. You can talk on them.
Yeah, thank you very much, Faith. I'll touch on the Total Energy story. You know
Okay.
that last year, the CEO had complained about rising energy tariffs as one of the drivers for the lower than expected profitability. This year, with energy tariffs falling mildly in 2021, as well as higher sales numbers in 2021, we saw top line actually jump significantly by about 10%, and gross profit was up by about 17% year on year, which was very significant, especially with which was very very significant for Total Energies, and actually drove the 50% increase in their profitability, especially with operating expenses being curtailed largely in the first half of the year. And it will be
Great.
very interesting to see what the outlook for Total Energies Kenya will be, with the company looking to expand um, into other spheres of energy production and distribution.
Okay, great. Thank you for that insight. And moving away from East Africa, we'll get right into West Africa and Nigerian financial markets, where President Muhammadu Buhari has set up the PIA, that's the Petroleum Industry Act Steering Committee, to take a look at the quick completion of the setting up of the Petroleum Industry Act. The Bank of Industry is planning $888 million Eurobond for agric and transport, while the Lekki Free Zone SPV 20-year 10 billion naira bond closing is coming on the 24th of August. We also have here that the Central Bank of Nigeria's freezing of the rice vest and bamboo Chaka accounts is still rattling the streets in Nigeria, although Rice Vest and Bamboo has come out to say that the funds of investors are still very safe and accessible. And Nestle SA is buying 1.87 million new shares in Nigeria unit, while Palm Ivory Coast is paying 102.51 CFA per share dividend come 27th of August. All of those in West Africa and Nigeria. And Yeka, would you like to speak on any of those?
Um, yeah, so Fed, I'd like to touch on a couple of these stories. On the steering committee, I think it's impressive to see that the president is looking to move fast on the Petroleum Industry Act. This is a bill that had been in waiting for a number of years, and it has the potential to unlock a lot of investments in the oil and gas space in Nigeria. And we it's definitely a positive sign. The steering committee is supposed to be headed by the Minister of Petroleum Resources, Timpere Silva, um, and will consist of a number of high-profile individuals. However, I see that the key challenges with that this steering committee would have to deal with would largely be getting the buy-in of host communities. They potentially stand to be either the largest beneficiaries or the biggest losers in this, depending on how the act is being administered or executed. And so I expect that there will be a lot of negotiations and back and forth between the steering committee and host communities. Looking at the Bank of Industry Eurobond plans, this has been rumored for a while, and we're seeing more detailed news on this. Um, the numbers being floated around are from 500 million to 700 million euros for the Eurobond, and it's expected to help support industries that have been affected heavily by the impact of the pandemic. We see this as a positive. However, it's will be interesting to see how it aligns with the federal government's overall $6.2 billion Eurobond plans, which they've talked about, which they've even started hiring financial advisors for. However, the most interesting story here for me is the Lekki Free Zone story. Of the four main quadrants that make up what we refer to as the Lagos Free Trade Zone. The Lekki Free Zone has seen the lowest amount of investment. Um, we've seen the Lagos Free Zone, which is largely occupied by the Tolaram Group. Um, you know, enjoy a lot of investment. According to some estimates, about $20 billion worth of investment have gone into that space. We all know the amount of money that has been poured into the Dangote Free Trade Zone area. We've seen a lot of activity in the Alara Free Trade Zone. However, the Lekki Free Zone has actually seen the lowest amount of investment, and even in terms of investment, even in terms of benefits for the overall economy, we haven't seen this. Particular quadrant achieve the objectives of the zone in itself. In that most of the goods being produced in these zones are sold within the country and are not usually exported. Now, I expect that this bond is coming at the right time, largely because we are seeing increased completion of, like, as we near the completion of um, construction in the Dangote Free Zones, which would boost a lot of activity in that space. We expect that the administrators of the Lekki Free Zone will be looking to use the proceeds of this bond to increase the attractiveness of the zone as an investment option for manufacturers and exporters. Um, Elsewhere, looking at the Nestle story, we've touched on this a few weeks ago when they bought some new shares. Also, while this seems like a positive thing, in reality, the driver is actually quite negative. We're seeing the FX liquidity challenges in the country force many multinationals to invest more money than they had planned to invest in in, in the country, uh, into their Nigerian businesses. Uh, and we expect that until FX liquidity challenges improve in Nigeria, we'll continue to see this trend. We'll continue to see this trend, um, however large it may be.
And moving on now, we'll move on to the financial reports stories, financial reports from the South Africa region. And going first with the South Africa inflation rate, which has trimmed down to 4.6% from the 4.9% recorded in the month of June. SARB is expecting local inflation to stand at 4.5% in 2 years, while the GCR places ABSA's first assignment on the negative rating watch. We have here the ESCOM CEO pushes for green industrialization, and DR Gold is expecting the financial year to revenue to rise up to 26% onto 5.27 billion rands. All of that in South Africa. Onyeka, would you like to speak on any of those?
Yeah, thank you, Faith. I'll quickly touch on the inflation story in Southern Africa, which is quite positive. Not just because of the disinflation from 4.9% to 4.6%, but because of the potential impact it will have
Okay.
on economic growth. Last month, we saw the South African Reserve Bank hold monetary policy levers, largely because they wanted to, see what the impact of the rioting in the nation's capital in the nation's capitals um, would do to inflation numbers. Um, Now that we've seen inflation basically coming sort of around expectation levels, um, the the SARB would have a bit more ammunition to reduce rates in order to support economic growth in South Africa. We've seen the
Okay.
impact of the third wave of the COVID in Southern African in the South African economy, and we believe that this rate cut will be largely important in supporting economic growth.
I think so too. I think so too. Thank you, Onyeka. So let's get on to move away from South Africa and head quickly to the North African region. Egypt is set to launch its biggest IPO in history next year, while Egypt, Somalia are in talks over regional development and bilateral relations. Bank Misr in Arabia Holding is putting up an 800 million Egyptian pounds loan deal, while Etisalat is injecting $500 million to upstake in Maroc Telecom. That's it on Frontier Opening Bell today. Thank you for watching. I am Faith Agbituya, and thank you so much, Onyeka Ejema, for joining me on the show today. It's really great having you.